There's a small group of people who remember dialing phones with their fingers and unboxing their first smartphone as adults, and psychology still isn't sure what to call them. Born somewhere between 1976 and 1985, you're technically on Gen X's younger edge, yet calling you a millennial doesn't feel right either, no matter how often people try forcing that label. Around 2014, academics coined the term zenial for your group. Some sociologists even classify you as a microgeneration because the birth year range is incredibly narrow. But that tight time frame created conditions genuinely worth analyzing. Today, we're unpacking what makes this cohort psychologically unique. Your early years unfolded in a pre-digital landscape where boredom meant sitting quietly with your thoughts, where memorizing seven-digit numbers was mandatory, missing your show's weekly broadcast. Tough luck, it vanished until reruns. Then, precisely as you entered adulthood, civilization flipped a switch and went digital. Not slowly, instantaneously. That transition's timing produced ripple effects we're still witnessing. Most cohorts mature entirely within a single technological framework. Xennials, though, navigated two radically different realities during the exact phase when identity forms. Your teenage landscape differed wildly from your 20s, creating a gap in lived experience broader than most generations encounter. Think about your daily routines back then. Recall how much of adolescence involved folding paper notes during class, or holding conversations that evaporated without record, or coordinating meetups without texting running 10 minutes behind, or where are you? You simply arrived at the agreed spot and trusted your crew would show. That demanded an entirely different species of trust and accountability than what exists today. Fast forward to your 20s. Everyone's clutching flip phones, you're creating profiles on Friendster, migrating to MySpace, eventually landing on Facebook. Before social platforms, people had maybe three contact methods: landline at home, office extension, or literally knocking on their door. Then, overnight, you're juggling 17 messaging platforms. And you adapted without manuals. Your formative years spanned both eras. Brain development research tells us the prefrontal cortex, the neural hub governing adaptability and complex skill acquisition, keeps maturing until around age 25. A Nature neuroscience study confirmed this region develops well into our 20s. Translation: Xennials still possessed high neuroplasticity precisely when technology underwent total upheaval. You were young enough that mastering new tools felt intuitive, yet old enough to vividly remember the previous paradigm. Gen Xers, already adults when tech exploded, often carry inherent skepticism. Millennials, especially younger ones, possess zero pre-internet memories. As a Xennial, you've lived both realities, forging a rare kind of cultural bilingualism. You can sustain face-to-face dialogue without compulsively glancing at screens every 20 seconds, but learning unfamiliar software doesn't trigger anxiety. You recall what genuine unreachability felt like being offline for entire afternoons, an experience many younger folks have never known. Yet you're not technophobic like some older demographics. This manifests in subtle ways you might overlook, like your relationship with privacy probably differs from other age groups. You matured in an era where cringeworthy moments simply dissolved into oral tradition instead of haunting the cloud eternally. That disastrous middle school haircut, that messy breakup, that regrettable party incident, zero photographic evidence exists. It lives only in retellings. This fundamentally alters how you relate to your past. Your memories could morph, could transform into narratives, could reshape naturally the way human cognition operates. You weren't imprisoned by documentation. Autobiographical memory research indicates how we archive and retrieve personal experiences is remarkably malleable. Our brains naturally edit recollections, preserving significance, releasing irrelevance. When everything becomes permanently archived and searchable, that organic process encounters complications we're still decoding. But here's where complexity enters. You also joined the workforce right around the 2008 collapse, meaning many of you faced severe economic turbulence during precisely the years meant for career foundation. That timing carries more weight than commonly acknowledged. Studies on economic hardship reveal that financial trauma during this developmental window leaves enduring psychological imprints. Individuals experiencing unemployment or instability at this life stage often internalize those experiences permanently, even after circumstances improve. It sculpts your thinking around money, security, and risk-taking in ways that resist easy erasure. So you've got this cohort trained to navigate massive technological upheaval, but simultaneously scarred economically right when stability mattered most. You handle change because survival demanded it. Yet you might carry this persistent undercurrent wondering when the floor drops out again through your decision-making. And virtually nobody discusses this pairing. Generational discourse typically frames Gen X versus Millennials as binary opposites, treating everyone born after 1965 and before 2000 identically. But your specific birth window, particularly during rapid societal shifts, manufactures distinct experiences defying those oversimplified buckets. Xennials navigate a paradox that's legitimately uncommon. You possess Gen X's self-sufficiency and wariness because you predated intensive parenting trends. Your parents likely didn't track your whereabouts for hours, and that registered as perfectly ordinary. You developed problem-solving independently, entertained yourself, confronted boredom and disappointment without immediate parental rescue. Yet you simultaneously reached maturity during the internet's honeymoon phase, when digital connectivity seemed destined to unite humanity and fix everything before collective realization dawned that maybe it's actually complicating matters. That's a peculiar intersection to occupy. Self-reliant, yet collaborative. Skeptical, yet hopeful. Digitally fluent, but analog-rooted. What appears to characterize Xennials is this capacity to embrace contradictions without cognitive dissonance. You remember both chapters, enabling you to recognize gains alongside losses. Maybe you're less nostalgic than Gen X because you genuinely value modern conveniences. But unlike numerous younger cohorts, you still identify what disappeared. We surrendered the ability to exist truly alone with our thoughts without deliberate effort. We sacrificed the patience cultivated through waiting. We relinquished a particular quality of presence that flourished when nothing constantly competed for attention. But we gained connectivity, access to information, and opportunities your younger self couldn't fathom. If you're Xennial, you likely feel perpetually misaligned. Too young for certain contexts, too old for others, stranded between worlds. That's not a deficiency. That's precisely your generation's signature trait. In a civilization accelerating beyond anyone's predictive capacity, having weathered one colossal transformation might represent one of the most critical lessons you absorbed. You've internalized adaptability as lifestyle. The context shaping your youth doesn't necessarily dictate your permanent reality. The Xennial journey merits examination for that reason above all others. Not because you're inherently superior, but because you inhabited a singular historical moment teaching something the rest of us are still learning: how to evolve without eroding your core identity. If this spoke to you, I genuinely value you hitting like and supporting SciMindQuest. I've got additional explorations lined up that I believe will resonate. Different subjects, identical depth. Catch you in the next one.